The text message came through at 2:47 a.m., jolting me awake from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. My hands trembled as I read the words on the screen. You think you can hide forever? I know where that little apartment is. I know where Leo goes to school. You owe me, and you're going to pay one way or another. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew exactly who it was. The loan shark. The one my father had sent after me. The one who had cornered me at the diner 3 weeks ago, with threats that made my blood run cold. I sat there in the darkness of my tiny bedroom, my son sleeping peacefully in the room next to mine, and I realized that this was it. This was the moment everything had been building toward. This was the night I would either break completely or find a strength I didn't know I had. Before I continue with what happened that night and how I got here, I want to ask you something. If you've ever felt trapped, if you've ever been used by the people who were supposed to love you, if you've ever had to choose between surviving and truly living, then this story is for you. Please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories like this. And leave a comment below telling me if you've ever had to make an impossible choice. Your support means everything, and it helps me know I'm not alone in this. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. 6 months earlier, I was living in what I can only describe as a waking nightmare. It wasn't always that way. When I was very young, maybe 5 or 6, I remember brief moments of normalcy. Birthday parties with homemade cake. Christmas mornings with a few wrapped presents under a small tree. My father would come home from work at the factory, tired but present. My mother would hum while cooking dinner, but those memories are so faint now. Like photographs left too long in the sun, faded and indistinct. The shift happened gradually. Then all at once, I was 7 when my father lost his job at the factory. Not because of layoffs or downsizing, but because he'd been caught, stealing parts to sell. He'd been gambling on the side for months, apparently, and the debts had piled up faster than his paycheck could cover. After that, finding steady work became harder and harder. He'd get hired somewhere, work for a few weeks or months. Then something would happen. He'd show up drunk. He'd get into a fight with a coworker. He'd steal from the register. And we'd be back to square one. My mother worked as a cashier at a grocery store, but her wages barely covered rent and utilities in the small house we lived in. The house that had belonged to my grandmother. The house that should have been paid off, but wasn't because my father had taken out a second mortgage to cover gambling debts. I didn't understand any of this when I was young. I just knew that there were more and more fights. More nights when my father came home smelling like alcohol and cigarettes, his eyes wild and angry. More times when my mother locked herself in the bathroom and cried. By the time I was 12, I'd become invisible in my own home. Not because my parents didn't see me, but because I'd learned that being seen meant being yelled at, being blamed, being used as an emotional punching bag when things went wrong. I learned to move quietly through the house, to do my homework in the corner of my room with a flashlight under the covers, to make myself as small and unnoticeable as possible. The house was foreclosed on 2 weeks before my 13th birthday. I came home from school to find all our belongings piled on the lawn and a notice nailed to the front door. My mother sat on the curb, her face blank, while my father screamed at the sheriff's deputy about his rights and how this was all a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. He'd stopped making mortgage payments 8 months earlier. Every dollar had gone to bookies and card games and horse races. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in the worst part of town, the kind of place where you heard gunshots at night and learned not to make eye contact with the dealers on the corner. My mother and father took 1 bedroom. I got the other, which was barely big enough for a twin mattress and a small dresser. The walls were so thin I could hear everything. Every fight. Every threat. Every night my father came home drunk and took out his frustrations on my mother. Verbally at first. Then eventually, physically. I was 14 the first time I called the police. It was 3 in the morning and I'd been woken by the sound of breaking glass and my mother's screams. I crept out of my room and saw my father with his hands around her throat, slamming her against the kitchen counter. I grabbed the cordless phone and dialed 911, my whole body shaking so hard I could barely press the buttons. The police came. They separated my parents. They took statements. But my mother, even with visible bruises forming on her neck, refused to press charges. It was just an argument, she told the officers, her voice hoarse. Things got out of hand. It won't happen again. The officers looked at me with something like pity in their eyes, but there was nothing they could do if the victim wouldn't cooperate. They left, and my father, once the squad car had disappeared down the street, turned that rage on me. You called the cops on me. His voice was deadly quiet, which was somehow worse than when he yelled. You called the fucking cops on your own father. You were hurting Mom, I whispered, backing toward my bedroom door. That's between me and her. Not your business. You understand me, he took a step closer. You ever pull something like that again? I'll give you something real to call the cops about. After that night, I stopped calling. I stopped asking for help. Because I learned a terrible lesson that night. No one was coming to save us. Not the police. Not child services. Not anyone. We were on our own. Trapped in this cycle. And the only way out was through. School became my escape. I threw myself into my studies with an obsession that worried my teachers. I was at the top of my class. Not because I was naturally brilliant, but because I studied every free moment I had. The library became my sanctuary. I'd stay there until closing time, doing homework, reading anything I could get my hands on, applying for every scholarship I could find. College was my ticket out. I just had to make it through high school. But my father had other ideas. When I was 16, I got a job at a local coffee shop. It was just weekends and a few afternoons after school. Minimum wage plus tips. I'd saved every penny, hiding the cash in a shoebox under my bed. I had almost $800 saved. Enough for application fees to colleges. Enough for a security deposit on an apartment once I graduated. Enough for a fresh start. I came home from work one Saturday evening to find my room ransacked. Drawers pulled open. Mattress flipped. Closet emptied. And my shoebox, my precious shoebox with all my carefully saved money, was gone. I found my father in the living room, counting bills at the kitchen table. My bills. That's my money, I said, my voice breaking. That's for college. He didn't even look up. Rent's due. We're 2 months behind. Would have been 3 if I hadn't found this. That's my money. I earned it. You can't just take it. Now he looked up, and the expression on his face made my blood run cold. I can't. This is my house. Everything in it belongs to me, including whatever my ungrateful kid thinks she's hiding. He stood up, pocketing the bills. You want to live here, you contribute. That's how it works. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the money and run. But I was 16. I had nowhere to go. No family who would take me in. No friends whose parents would let me move in. So I swallowed my rage and went back to my destroyed room and cried until I had no tears left. That was the first time, but it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 2 years, every time I managed to save any money, my father found it. He went through my things regularly, like a drug addict searching for a fix. And every time, he took it. To pay bookies. To buy alcohol. To cover debts from poker games in basement casinos. My college fund became his gambling fund. And there wasn't a thing I could do about it. I did manage to graduate high school. Though barely. Not because of my grades, which were still excellent, but because I was working 30 hours a week on top of school just to save anything. I got accepted to the state university with a partial scholarship. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but I'd planned to take out loans, work full-time, do whatever it took. And then, 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for orientation, my mother had a breakdown. I came home from my shift at the coffee shop to find her sitting on the bathroom floor. Empty pill bottles around her. A half-empty bottle of vodka in her hand. She was conscious, but barely. Her words slurred. Her eyes unfocused. I called 911 again. This time without hesitation. She was hospitalized for 3 days. Psychiatric hold. When I visited her, she looked at me with such emptiness in her eyes. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. I can't live like this. But I don't know how to leave. Come with me. I begged her. I'm going to college. We can get away. Both of us. She shook her head slowly. I'm too old to start over. And he needs me. He's destroying you. I know. She closed her eyes. But I can't leave him. I don't know who I am without him. That's when I understood. My mother wasn't just a victim. She was complicit in her own destruction. She'd chosen this life. Chosen him. And she would keep choosing him no matter what. And if I stayed, I'd become just like her. Trapped. Broken. Unable to leave. I should have left for college anyway. I should have packed my bags and gone and never looked back. But guilt is a powerful thing. And the hospital bills for my mother's suicide attempt were enormous. My father guilted me into staying. You're just going to abandon your mother when she needs you most. What kind of daughter does that? So I deferred my admission. Just for 1 semester. I told myself, just until things stabilized. That was the biggest mistake of my life. 1 semester turned into a year. A year turned into 2. I was still working at the coffee shop. But now, I was also giving most of my paycheck directly to my father. To cover the medical bills, he said. To keep us afloat, he said. I was 19, 20, 21, watching my life slip away while I funded his addiction. Then I met Daniel. He was a customer at the coffee shop. A few years older than me. Good-looking in a rough-around-the-edges kind of way. He flirted with me for weeks before I finally agreed to go out with him. That first date turned into a second, then a third. He was sweet and funny, and he made me feel like maybe there was something beyond the suffocating life I'd been living. We dated for 4 months. It was the happiest I'd been in years. He didn't come from much either. Worked construction. Lived in a studio apartment. But he treated me well. He listened when I talked. He made me laugh. When I was with him, I could almost forget about the chaos waiting for me at home. I got pregnant in November. I was 22. We'd been careful. Or we thought we had been. But apparently not careful enough. When I told Daniel, his whole demeanor changed. The sweet, attentive boyfriend disappeared, replaced by someone cold and distant. You need to take care of it, he said, not even looking at me. What do you mean? You know what I mean. I'm not ready to be a dad. Hell, I can barely take care of myself, but I want to keep it. The words surprised me even as I said them, but they were true. This baby, this tiny life growing inside me, felt like a chance at something pure, something that was truly mine. Then you're on your own. Daniel stood up from my couch, grabbed his jacket. I'll sign whatever papers you need me to sign. But I'm not doing the dad thing. I'm not. He walked out, and I never saw him again. He did sign the papers, terminating his parental rights before Leo was even born. Just one more person who'd chosen to abandon me. My father's reaction was somehow worse than Daniel's. You got knocked up, he laughed. A cruel. Bitter sound. Of course you did. Stupid girl. Now you're really trapped. Aren't you? Can't leave. Can't go to college. You're stuck here with us. Just like your mother. But he was wrong. The pregnancy didn't make me feel trapped. It made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. This baby needed me. This baby would depend on me. And I would not fail him the way my parents had failed me. I would not raise my child in this toxic, poisonneux environment. I worked at the coffee shop until I was 8 months pregnant. Saved every possible dollar. Found a night job doing data entry from home for extra money. I moved out 2 weeks before Leo was born, renting a tiny studio apartment across town. It wasn't much. Just one room with a kitchenette and a bathroom so small you could barely turn around in it. But it was mine. Mine and Leo's. My father was furious. He showed up at the hospital the day after Leo was born, demanding to know where I was living, telling me I was selfish for leaving when they needed me. The nurses had to escort him out. My mother came too, but she just cried and didn't say much of anything. When she held Leo, tears streaming down her face, I almost softened, almost invited her to be part of our lives. But then she handed him back and said, "You need to come home. Ellie, your father is getting worse without the money you were bringing in. Please, just come home." And I realized she didn't care about me or Leo. She cared about the money I could provide. She cared about having a buffer between her and my father's rage. So I told her to leave. And I cried after she was gone, mourning the mother I'd never really had. The first 2 years of Leo's life were the hardest and best years of my life simultaneously. Hard because I was exhausted all the time. Working multiple jobs. Barely sleeping. Living on pasta and whatever cheap protein I could find on sale. Best because Leo was perfect. Watching him grow, hearing his first laugh, seeing him take his first steps. All of it filled me with a joy I didn't know was possible. I didn't hear from my parents much during that time. A few phone calls from my mother, always asking for money, always telling me how bad things were. I sent what I could when I could, usually $50 or $100 every few months. Enough to ease my guilt, but not so much that it hurt us. I thought maybe they'd finally left me alone. I thought maybe I was free. I was wrong. Leo was 3 when my father found out where I worked. I'd changed jobs by then, leaving the coffee shop for a position at George's diner. It paid better, and the hours were more stable. George was a good boss, understanding about single parenthood, willing to work around my childcare needs. I'd been there about 6 months when my father walked through the door. I was taking an order from a regular customer when I looked up and saw him sitting in a booth by the window. My heart stopped. He looked terrible, older than his 50 years. His face red and bloated from alcohol, his clothes dirty and worn. When our eyes met, he smiled. Not a warm smile. A smile that said he'd been hunting me and had finally found his prey. I wanted to run. I wanted to grab Leo from the small corner where George let him play and just disappear. But I was at work. I had customers. So I finished taking the order, went to the kitchen to put it in, and tried to calm my racing heart. "That man in booth 7? I said quietly to George. "That's my father. I haven't seen him in 3 years. George, who knew bits and pieces of my history, frowned. "You want me to ask him to leave?" "No. I'll talk to him. Just keep an eye on Leo for me." George nodded, moving to where Leo was coloring at a small table near the register. I took a deep breath, grabbed a menu and a glass of water, and walked over to my father's booth. "What can I get you?" I kept my voice neutral. "Professional. That any way to greet your old man?" He leaned back in the booth, that same cruel smile on his face. "Been a long time. Ellie. What do you want?" Can't a father visit his daughter at work, see his grandson? His eyes drifted to where Leo was sitting. He's gotten big. 3-4. He just turned 3. I gripped the menu so hard, my knuckles turned white. "What do you want?" I repeated. Robert's smile faded. "Your mother's in the hospital. Kidney failure. She needs dialysis. The bills are piling up." My stomach dropped. "What?" "She's been sick for a while. Didn't want to worry you." He looked down at his hands. For a moment, just a moment, he looked almost human, almost like a father who cared. Then he looked back up and I saw the calculation in his eyes. "Hospital wants $20,000 up front for the treatment. Insurance won't cover it all. I don't have $20,000. I barely have $2,000. But you're working. You got this job. You could get the money. How am I supposed to get $20,000? He shrugged. "Take out a loan. Use credit cards. I don't know. Figure it out. She's your mother. She's your wife." I shot back. "You figure it out." His face darkened. "Watch your mouth. I'm still your father. Biologically, maybe. But you stopped being a father the first time you stole from me." I set the menu down on the table. "I'm sorry Mom's sick. I really am. But I can't help you. I have a son to take care of. I have my own bills. So you're just going to let her die?" Robert's voice rose loud enough that other customers started turning to look. "Your mother is dying and you won't even try to help." "Lower your voice." I hissed. "I said I can't help. I didn't say I wouldn't try. I'll see what I can do. But I'm not promising anything." He stood up, looming over me. "You'll do more than try. You'll get that money. Because if you don't, her death is on you. You hear me? On you." He left without ordering anything, without paying for the water I'd brought him. I stood there shaking until George came over and gently guided me to the back room. "Take a break," he said. "I'll cover your tables." I did call the hospital. My mother was there. She did have kidney failure. But when I talked to the billing department, they said the family owed more like $50,000. Not 20. Years of medical bills from my mother's previous hospitalizations. All unpaid. The kidney failure was real, but it was a result of years of untreated diabetes, heavy drinking, and neglect. And yes, She needed dialysis, but the hospital wasn't refusing treatment because of the debt. They were providing care and working on a payment plan. My father had lied, or at least exaggerated, used my mother's real illness to try to manipulate money out of me. When I called him and confronted him about it, he didn't deny it. So what if I rounded up, he said. His voice slurred. He was drinking. Of course he was drinking. Point is, she needs help. We need help. And you're doing fine. You got a job. You got an apartment. You can afford to help family. I can't afford anything. I'm barely making ends meet. Then, work more. Take on extra shifts. Do what you gotta do. I already work 50 hours a week. When am I supposed to see my son? That's your problem, not mine. His voice turned cold. You made your choices. Now you live with them. But you're going to help your mother. You're going to do right by this family. I've been doing right by this family my whole life, I said, and something in my voice must have scared him because he went quiet. I gave you my childhood. I gave you my college fund. I gave you years of my life and thousands of dollars. I'm done giving. I hung up. Blocked his number. Blocked my mother's number too when she started calling from the hospital, using the same guilt tactics. How can you do this to me when I'm sick? I'm your mother. Family takes care of family. But here's what I'd learned. Family isn't about blood. It's about love and respect and mutual support. And these people who were supposed to love me, had never done any of that. They'd taken and taken and taken, and now they were angry that the well had finally run dry. For 3 months, I had peace. I worked at the diner. I took care of Leo. I even started taking an online class through the community college, trying to finally finish the degree I'd started so long ago. George had started mentioning promotion opportunities. I was making friends with some of the other servers. Life was hard, but it was mine. Then Robert showed up at the diner again. This time he wasn't alone. It was a Tuesday evening. Right in the middle of the dinner rush. I was juggling 4 tables, trying to get orders out fast. When I saw him walk in with another man, this man was tall, heavily tattooed, with the kind of face that had seen too many fights. They sat in a booth and just watched me. Didn't order anything. Just watched. When the rush finally died down around 8, the tattooed man gestured me over. I approached slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run. You Ellie? The man asked. His voice was surprisingly soft for someone who looked so dangerous. Who's asking? Name's Marco. Your father here owes my boss some money. A lot of money. He gestured casually to Robert, who wouldn't meet my eyes. We've been trying to collect, but Robert doesn't seem to have it. He suggested we talk to you instead. My blood turned to ice. I don't have anything to do with his debts. Marco smiled, but it was the kind of smile a shark gives before it bites. That's what everyone says. But here's the thing. Your daddy here took out these loans saying his daughter would back him. Said you had a good job. That you were good for the money. So in my book, you're involved whether you like it or not. I never agreed to anything. I never signed anything. Doesn't matter. In our world, a man's word is binding. And if he can't pay, his family pays. Marco leaned forward. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give us $5,000 by Friday. That'll cover the interest for this month. Then you're going to make monthly payments of $2,000 until the full $75,000 is paid off. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. I don't have $5,000. I don't even have $500 saved. And I'm definitely not paying $75,000 for debts I didn't create. Then we have a problem. Marco's eyes drifted to the corner of the diner where Leo was playing with his toy cars. That your kid? Terror flooded through me. Sharp and primal. Don't you dare. I'm not threatening anyone, Marco said calmly. Just making conversation. Cute kid. It would be a shame if something happened to him. I looked at my father. Really looked at him. And I saw no remorse in his eyes. No shame. Just the desperate calculation of an addict who would sacrifice anything and anyone to escape his own consequences. You brought them here, I asked him. My voice barely a whisper. You brought these people to my workplace, around my son. Robert had the decency to look uncomfortable. You wouldn't answer my calls. I had no choice. You had a choice. You've always had a choice. And you always choose wrong. I turned back to Marco. I'm not paying your debt. I'm not paying anything. You want money. You deal with him. Marco's expression hardened. That's not how this works. Sweetheart, I don't care how it works. Touch me. Touch my son. And I'll go straight to the police. I'll tell them everything. Names. Dates. Places. I'll cooperate with any investigation. Is that really worth $75,000 to you? For a long moment, Marco just stared at me. Then he smiled again, this time with something that might have been respect. You got guts. I'll give you that. But guts don't pay debts. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. You got until Friday. After that, things get unpleasant. They left, both of them, and I stood there shaking so hard I had to grip the edge of the table to stay upright. George appeared at my elbow. You okay? He asked gently. I shook my head. I need to go to the police. George drove me there himself, Leo in the back seat, still oblivious to the danger swirling around him. At the police station, I asked for someone who handled loan shark cases. They connected me with Detective Sarah Miller, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I told her everything. About my father's gambling, about Marco's threats, about the debt I had nothing to do with. She listened, took notes, and at the end, she looked at me with an expression that was both sympathetic and frustrating. Here's the problem, Detective Miller said, without actual evidence of threats, without recorded conversations or witnesses. There's not much we can do. These guys are smart. They imply, but they don't state outright. Your father is the one who owes the money, not you. And technically, while what they're doing is illegal, proving it is difficult. So I'm just supposed to wait until they actually hurt us. No? You're supposed to be smart. She slid a card across her desk. This is a lawyer who specializes in these kinds of cases. She works pro bono for victims of financial coercion. Call her. Also, I'm going to file a report and will increase patrols around your home and workplace. If they approach you again, call me immediately. And Ellie. She waited until I met her eyes. Don't engage with your father anymore. He's the bridge they're using to get to you. Cut that bridge down. That night, lying in bed, while Leo slept peacefully in his room, I made a decision. I was done running, done hiding, done letting my father's choices dictate my life. I was going to fight back. The next morning, I called the lawyer Detective Miller had recommended. Her name was Jennifer Torres, and she was a force of nature. Within a week, she'd helped me file restraining orders against both my father and Marco. She'd also sent cease and desist letters to the loan shark operation, threatening legal action if they came near me again. They'll probably ignore it. Jennifer warned me. But it creates a paper trail. If anything happens, it proves you tried to handle this legally. I also started documenting everything. Every threatening call, every text message. Every time my father or anyone associated with him tried to contact me, I bought a small camera for the apartment entrance. I varied my routes to and from work. I made sure Leo was never alone, never unsupervised, and I started looking for a new place to live. Somewhere they couldn't find me. Somewhere safe. George helped me with that too. He knew a landlord who owned a small building on the other side of town. A one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood with a security gate and cameras. It was more expensive than what I was paying. But George offered to give me a raise and extra shifts to make it work. Why are you helping me? I asked him one day, overwhelmed by his kindness. He smiled sadly. I had a daughter once. She got mixed up with the wrong guy. Couldn't get out of a bad situation. By the time she asked for help, it was too late. He killed her. His voice cracked. So when I see someone trying to get out, trying to save themselves and their kid, I help. I couldn't save my Jenny. But maybe I can help save you. I cried in his office that day. Not tears of sadness, but tears of gratitude. For the first time in my life, someone was helping me without expecting anything in return. I moved on a Saturday night in early September. George and his son Miguel helped me load my things into a borrowed truck. We worked quickly, paranoid that someone was watching. By midnight, everything I owned was in the new apartment, and I was changing the locks. The apartment was small but clean. The previous tenant had left it in good condition. Leo loved it immediately, running from room to room, excited about his new home. I set up his bed in the corner of the bedroom, hung curtains to give him privacy. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And most importantly, it was safe. For 2 glorious weeks, we had peace. I worked my shifts at the diner. Leo started preschool at a little place, 2 blocks from the new apartment. I'd drop him off in the morning, work, pick him up in the afternoon, and spend the evening playing with him, reading to him, just being present. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, wasn't jumping at every unexpected sound. Then my mother found us. It was a Tuesday night, close to 11. I'd just gotten Leo to sleep after a particularly challenging bedtime routine when someone knocked on my door. Not pounded. Knocked. Soft and hesitant. I looked through the peephole, and my heart sank. Susan stood in the hallway, and she looked worse than I'd ever seen her. She'd lost weight, at least 30 pounds. Her hair was thin and gray. Her clothes hung off her frame. Her face was hollow. Her skin had a yellowish tint. She looked like death. I wanted to not open the door. I wanted to pretend I wasn't home. But she knew I was there. She'd seen the light under the door. And despite everything, despite all the ways she'd failed me, she was still my mother. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. "How did you find me?" "Does it matter?" Her voice was hoarse, probably from the dialysis. "Can I come in, please?" "No." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Ellie, please. I'm sick. I'm getting treatment. But I'm sick. Your father. He's in serious trouble. The people he owes money to, they're not playing around anymore. That's not my problem. He's your father. He stopped being my father a long time ago, and you stopped being my mother every time you chose him over me." I gripped the door. "I'm sorry you're sick. I really am. But I can't help you." "I won't help you." Susan started crying, big heaving sobs that shook her thin frame. "They're going to kill him. Ellie. They said they're going to kill him if he doesn't pay. And then they'll come after me. Please. I know we haven't been good parents. I know we've hurt you. But please, help us this one time and we'll never bother you again." "You've said that before. Every time you asked for money. You said it would be the last time. It never was. This time is different. This time I mean it." "No." I started to close the door. "Wait." Susan put her hand against the door, stopping me. "What if I could give you something? What if I could make it worth your while? There's nothing you have that I want." "The house. Grandma's house. It's still technically in the family, even though it was foreclosed. There's equity there. If you help us pay off the debt, I'll sign the house over to you. You could sell it. Keep the money. It could be your fresh start." I almost laughed. That house was foreclosed on over a decade ago. Whatever equity was there is long gone. Not all of it. The market rebounded. There's probably 30, 40,000 in equity. Maybe more. She was talking fast now. "Despérate. Please. Ellie. This is all I have to offer. Even if that were true, I don't have $75,000 to pay off Dad's debt. But you could get it. You could take out a loan using the house as collateral. Please." And that's when I understood. This wasn't about helping them. This was about trapping me. If I took out a loan using the house as collateral, I'd be legally responsible for the debt. If I couldn't pay it, I'd lose everything. They weren't offering me a way out. They were trying to drag me down with them. "Go home, Mom," I said quietly. "Or wherever you're staying. But leave me alone. You're really going to just let us die? You've been dying your whole lives. I can't save you. I never could. The only person I can save is me and my son. And that's what I'm going to do." I closed the door. She stood outside, crying and begging for another 10 minutes before she finally left. I sat on my couch in the dark, listening to her footsteps fade away. And I felt nothing. No guilt. No sadness. Just emptiness. The next day, I changed my phone number again. blocked every email I had, made sure the preschool knew that under no circumstances were they to release Leo to anyone but me, and that if anyone claiming to be his grandparents showed up, they should call the police immediately. 3 days later, Detective Miller called me with news. Your father was arrested last night. He was picked up outside an illegal gambling operation. Got drunk. Started a fight. Assaulted an officer when they tried to remove him. He's being charged with assault on a police officer, public intoxication, resisting arrest, and there are warrants for his other debts. My first reaction was relief, then concern. What about my mother? Haven't seen her. But based on what you told me, I'd say she's probably hiding. When she surfaces, we'll talk to her about the threats and coercion. But Ellie, I need you to know something. We've been investigating this loan shark operation for months. Your willingness to come forward, to document everything, it gave us the evidence we needed to make arrests. We got Marco and his boss yesterday. They're facing federal charges for racketeering, extortion, money laundering. You helped us take down a major criminal operation. I didn't feel heroic. I just felt tired. What about my dad? He's facing serious time. The assault on an officer alone is enough for a few years. Add in the outstanding warrants, the gambling debts, and if we can prove any connection to the loan shark operation, he's looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. She paused. I also want to tell you something. When we interviewed your neighbors from your old building, several of them came forward with information. Mrs. Chen, in particular, kept detailed records of domestic disturbances coming from your parents' apartment. She documented times she heard fighting, times she saw you with bruises, dates and times of everything. With her testimony and yours, the DA wants to pursue additional charges against your father for domestic abuse. How far back? As far as we can prove. Could go back years. I sat down heavily on my couch. All those years of abuse, all those times I thought no one saw, no one cared. Someone had been watching. Someone had been documenting. Someone had cared enough to keep records just in case someone someday might need them. Will I have to testify? I asked. Eventually, yes, but not right away. First, there's the assault case, which is pretty clear-cut. Then we'll move to the other charges. Detective Miller's voice softened. I know this is hard, but this is your chance for real justice. Not revenge. Justice. The trial happened 4 months later. By then, I'd had time to process everything. Had been going to therapy twice a week, courtesy of a victim assistance program. My therapist, Dr. Patricia Chen, was no relation to Mrs. Chen from the old building, but she was equally kind. She helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't just bad parenting, it was abuse. Systematic, long-term abuse. And that choosing to protect myself and Leo wasn't selfish, it was survival. Walking into that courtroom was one of the hardest things I've ever done. My father sat at the defense table looking smaller than I remembered. Older. Broken. When our eyes met, I saw hatred there. Pure. Undiluted hatred. He blamed me for all of this. For his arrest. For the charges. For the fact that his life had finally caught up with him. But I didn't look away. I held his gaze until he was the one who looked down. My testimony took 3 hours. The prosecutor walked me through my entire history with my father. The stealing. The violence. The threats. The loan shark situation. I brought documentation. Text messages. Medical records from times I'd gone to the clinic for injuries. Statements from George. From Jennifer Torres. From Detective Miller. Even Leo's preschool teacher testified about Leo's fear of older men that first month of school. How he'd flinch when male teachers raised their voices. The defense attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, as a daughter who'd abandoned her sick mother and helpless father and was now making up stories for attention, but they couldn't refute the evidence. They couldn't explain away the documented history of abuse, the threatening messages, the testimony from multiple witnesses. Mrs. Chen's testimony was particularly powerful. She was an elderly Korean woman who'd lived in the apartment building for 30 years. She spoke quietly but firmly, describing in painful detail the sounds she'd heard through the walls. The screaming, the breaking glass, the nights when it went quiet in a way that was somehow worse than the noise. She'd kept a journal, she explained, because her own daughter had been in an abusive relationship and she'd learned too late the importance of documentation. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, they found my father guilty on all counts. Assault on a police officer, multiple counts of domestic abuse spanning over a decade, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. For the years he'd stolen money I'd earned as a teenager, the judge sentenced him to 8 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 5. As they led him away in handcuffs, he turned and looked at me one last time. "This is on you," he said. "All of this is your fault." But it wasn't. It was on him. Every choice, every action, every moment of cruelty. It was all on him. My mother never showed up to the trial. I heard through Detective Miller that she'd moved in with her sister in Arizona, that she'd told people I was a terrible daughter who'd abandoned her in her time of need, that she was playing the victim. As always, I thought about reaching out to her, about trying one last time to explain, to make her understand. But Dr. Chen helped me see that some people would never understand. Some people were so committed to their own narrative that no amount of truth would change their minds. You can't force someone to see you. Dr. Chen told me during one session, you can't make them acknowledge the pain they caused. The only thing you can do is move forward and build a life that doesn't revolve around their dysfunction. So that's what I did. I moved forward. That was 8 months ago. Today, Leo and I live in a life I never dreamed possible when I was younger. We're still in the same apartment, though I've made it more of a home. There are pictures on the walls now. Leo's artwork from preschool. A small bookshelf with more books than I could afford growing up. Plants on the windowsill that I actually managed to keep alive. I'm still at the diner. But George promoted me to assistant manager 3 months ago. It came with a significant raise and better hours. I'm also finishing my degree, taking online classes at night after Leo goes to bed. It's slow going, but I'll graduate next year with a degree in business management. George has already told me that when he's ready to retire in a few years, he wants to sell me the diner. "You've made this place feel like home for so many people," he told me. "You deserve to own it." Leo is thriving. He's in kindergarten now, reading above his grade level, making friends easily. He doesn't flinch anymore when I raise my voice or move too quickly. He laughs freely and often. He's curious and kind and so full of joy. Sometimes I look at him and I can't believe we made it out, that we survived and found our way to something beautiful. I'm in therapy every week still. Probably will be for a long time. The trauma of those years doesn't just disappear. But I'm learning that I deserved better. Learning that setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. Learning that I'm worth more than what I can provide for others. Last month, I went on my first date in over 5 years. A guy named Marcus who comes into the diner every Wednesday for lunch. He's a teacher at the elementary school near us. He's kind and patient and he makes me laugh. We've gone out 3 times now, taking things very slow. He knows my history, knows I have a son, knows I'm cautious, and he respects all of that. "I'm not going anywhere," he told me on our 3rd date. "Whenever you're ready, however fast or slow you want to go, I'm here." It feels strange to be treated well, to be valued, to be seen as more than just a source of money or labor or obligation, but I'm learning to accept it. Learning that this is how relationships are supposed to be. Mutual respect. Mutual support. Mutual care. I still have moments when I think about my parents, when I wonder if I could have done something different, something that might have changed the outcome. But those moments are getting fewer and farther between. My therapist says that's progress, that I'm accepting what is rather than mourning what could never have been. I saw my mother once after the trial. It was completely by accident. I was at the grocery store with Leo and I turned down an aisle and there she was. She looked better than the last time I'd seen her. She'd gained back some weight. Her color was better. The dialysis was working. We made eye contact for maybe 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Shame. Maybe. Or regret. But then it was gone, replaced by the same blank expression she'd worn my whole life. She turned and walked away without saying a word. Leo, who had never really known his grandparents, asked, "Mommy, Who was that lady? No one important. Baby, I said, and I meant it. Some people might think I'm bitter, that I'm angry or resentful or holding on to the past, but I'm not. I'm just honest. I'm honest about what happened. I'm honest about the damage that was done. And I'm honest about the fact that I owe those people nothing. Not my time, not my money, not my forgiveness, and certainly not my future. The scars are still there. Some literal, some metaphorical, but they're healing. And more importantly, they're not defining me anymore. I'm not the girl who got beaten and stolen from. I'm not the woman who was manipulated and threatened. I'm Ellie. I'm a mother. I'm a manager. I'm a student. I'm a survivor. And I'm building a life on my own terms. To anyone listening to this story who's been where I was, who's trapped in a relationship where you're being used or abused or taken for granted, please hear me when I say this. You deserve better. You deserve to be loved and respected and valued for who you are, not for what you can provide. It's not selfish to save yourself. It's not cruel to set boundaries. It's not wrong to choose your own well-being and the well-being of those who depend on you. Walking away from my parents was the hardest thing I've ever done, but staying would have killed me. Slowly but surely. And I refused to die for people who never truly lived for me. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between family and your own survival? Have you ever had to walk away from people you loved because loving them was destroying you? Drop a comment and let me know. Your story matters. Your experience matters. And if this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of survival and hope. Together, we're stronger than the things that tried to break us.